Hey everybody, just wanted to make a quick video of a 12 to 24 volt conversion that I did recently on my daughter's Jeep Hurricane Power Wheels. This was a 12 volt, I went to a 24 volt. It has two 12 volt 12 amp batteries in it. Now the original Power Wheels battery was a 12 volt, but it was a 9.5 amp battery, which means it doesn't run as long without being charged as these 12 amp 12 volt batteries will. So as you can see, what I've done here is I've taken two 12 volts, I've bridged them together with the connections here and here. It would be the negative off of one battery and the positive off the other battery. What I've put in between this connection is a 30 amp breaker. Now this is just merely for safety. If anything gets hot or shorts out, it'll stop it. That way possibly there would be no fire at that point, because you could possibly very easily have a fire. The same thing I've done here with another 30 amp breaker. Now what I've done is, this is the hot wire. The white wire is the hot wire. I've seen lots of videos on this from other guys, and they're calling this wire the ground, the negative. That's not true. This is the hot wire. White is hot. So I've done the same thing from the Power Wheel. I've taken and put another 30 amp breaker. I've cut the wire, and in between I put a 30 amp breaker. Now this will go to the original plug. This is the original Power Wheel plug right here. So the white wire is the hot, and I've put the breaker in between. The black wire is the ground that leads to the Power Wheel. You got a white, hot, black, ground. They're both in the plug. The only difference is I cut the white wire, and put a 30 amp breaker in. Again, that is just for safety. So I've got security here. I've got both of them, both connections secured in case something were to go wrong. If the motors get too hot, the batteries get too hot, etc. Now, this plug here, this is out of the original Power Wheels battery. You pop the top off, and you got to be real careful that you don't puncture the battery, because it's not easy to get the top off. You pop the top off of the battery and use this plug to make your connection. And as you can see, again, the white wire is the hot, and it is going to the battery on this side to the hot. The black wire is the ground, the negative, and it is going to the negative on the other battery. This is the proper way to bridge two 12 volt batteries and make it a 24 volt system. And you can make it an 18 volt if you want. You can put three 6 volt batteries in here, or you can put a 12 volt battery in here, or you can put with a 6 volt battery, a 12 and a 6, or you can just do two 12s if you want to do 24 volt. It's up to you. Now when you put these batteries in, they're not going to obviously fit, because it started out just being one Fisher-Price 12 volt battery. So you will have to cut this out. So you want to measure the width of your batteries, the length of your batteries, and you want to cut just enough out for these batteries to set down as low as possible, all the way to the bottom, and not a whole bunch of room for them to wiggle back and forth. You want them to be pretty snug in there. As you can see, I added a 1x2 with brackets for extra security here, so these batteries won't move at all. It's important that these batteries don't move around, because if they do, these connections are going to keep coming off when your child's riding, and you're going to have to go out there and keep putting them back on. So that's the reason why I put this in place. These batteries will not go anywhere. The connections will not move. Now another thing, when you do a 12 volt to an 18 or a 24 volt system, you have to consider the gearboxes. and the motors. This is a stock motor. This is what comes with the power wheel when it's a 12-volt system. This motor will not work if you're going to go to an 18 or 24-volt system. It will burn up quickly. This is a stock gearbox. Now, as you can hear, it doesn't sound very well because it's broke. The teeth on the gears have busted on this one. If I can get it open. You can see the broken teeth right there, right there. Now again, the stock gearboxes will work, but what's important is there's 4 gears in here. That's the final drive gear, the 4th gear. That's the 3rd gear. That's the 2nd gear. And this is your 1st gear. This is your most important gear. Now, the still gear would be the preferred method here. It's your 1st gear. It is the one that makes contact with the pinion gear in the motor. Okay, it comes through here, through the back. When you take this apart, there'll be 2 screws holding this motor in. You want to take them screws out, which are right here, and then you have 1, 2, 3, 4 more screws. That's how you take this apart. But it's real important that if you're going to upgrade to an 18 or 24 volt system, that you order the 1st gear in steel. This helps with friction and heat transfer. It's real important to have a steel 1st gear. Now you can get on ML Toys website and you can order this gearbox assembly with the upgraded motor. This is the stock motor, like I mentioned earlier. You can get it with the 775 motor that has a built-in fan to keep this motor cool. You can get this as a whole assembly for $180, but it does not come with the steel gear. It comes with a plastic gear. So before you upgrade to a 24 or an 18 volt system, it's a good idea to take these apart and take a look at the condition of all these gears. If they're in pretty good shape, then my suggestion would be to just order this gear itself. It's $32 on ML Toys website. It's pretty pricey, but you'd have to get 2 obviously because there's 1 per back wheel. I would, if your gears are in good shape, I would just order this steel 1st gear. Do not attempt to upgrade to the 775 motors, which you can get on ML Toys website as well. Do not attempt to upgrade this and leave all of this the way it is. Like I said, if these gears are good, you can leave them, but the 1st gear, I strongly suggest that you get it in steel. It'd be $64 for 2 of them. Now you can order this whole assembly with the upgraded motor, the 775 high performance with the built-in fan, which is a lot more torquier and a lot faster than this original motor. You can order the whole assembly with the 1st gear being steel for $240 off of ML Toys. Or like I said, if all of your stuff is good, all these other gears are good, just order this. Because the $240 assembly with the upgraded motor, all these gears are still plastic. The only one that's steel is the 1st one. So that's something you might want to think about. Now another thing that you want to consider is the brakes. These motors and gearboxes have a built-in brake on them, and when your child lets off the pedal, there's an abrupt stop. It stops right now. And with the upgraded motors, like I mentioned before, which you will need if you want to go to an 18 or 24 volt system, that's more power, more torque going to, from the motors going to them plastic gears. So what you want to order is something that's called a brake reduction module. And I don't know if you can see that or not, but the brake reduction module down at the bottom, it's a real cheap item. It's only 10 bucks. And what that will do is, instead of that abrupt quick stop which wears your gears out, it will be a gradual stop. It'll still stop, but it'll roll just a few more inches than normal. So there's not that sudden jerk which tears up your gears. Now, the place you install that is in the brake pedal, or in the pedal down here where they put their foot to go. Okay? There's 3 wires here, and when you get on, if you decide to get that, when you get on the ML Toys website, it shows you exactly which wire. Now, what you'll do is you'll take this screw out, this screw out, this screw out, and this one out. And you'll lift the seat out as well. And it has a series of screws back here. You'll lift that out, and then wires will be exposed. You'll cut that wire, give yourself a couple inches of a gap in it to make up for the brake module, and you'll just plug it in and crimp it down, and you're good to go. Now, mine is right here underneath this, so I can't show it to you because I've already got it installed. So that's where you want to put that, and like, I can't stress it enough how important that is to have that, because if you don't have that, you're going to be tearing this Jeep apart, your kid's power wheel, whatever power wheel it is, apart frequently, and replacing the gearboxes. And the gearboxes are about $30 to $40 a piece online. You can get them at Amazon, or you can get them at ML Toys, either one. But that's pretty important piece. Now, when you take these apart, I've left the cap off here to show you. When you go to replace the motors and the gearboxes, you'll take this little screw out. This will pop off, and all you're going to do, and this over here, you can do it on either side, it don't matter. You can do it on this side or that side, it does not matter. But you'll just pull, the tire will come off when you take this off, and you'll just pull the whole axle out. And you have to do that to get the gearboxes and motors out. You have to do that. It's real simple. You just take the screw out, the wheel pops off, you come over here to the other side, you pull the whole axle out with the wheel on it. It's a pretty easy procedure. And like I said, if you want to go from 12 to 18 or 24, it doesn't matter. Your stock motors are not going to handle either one. They're not going to handle it, so you're going to have to replace the stock motors. And like I suggested, that first gear, you definitely want to get it in steel. Now, here's a shot of the site that I've got everything on. Give you a second to look at that. I've got about $300 in this, and so it can get pretty pricey. And I've learned the hard way, and I've been experimenting. I've probably wasted a little bit of money, but it's worth it for the kid. So this is the original battery holder, okay? And this will not work with 2 batteries, or if you decide to go with an 18-volt system, 3/6 volts. Regardless, it's not going to work. You can see I put the 1x2 in there and made brackets in there, so that's what I decided to go with. Now, these are the original screws. Okay, you got to remember you're going in plastic, so when you take this out, you bring a little bit of plastic with it, and it's possible you'll be taking this apart more than once. Okay, unless you get lucky the first time. So I went and got the same diameter screw, just a little bit longer, because there's room for it to go down farther and bite more plastic. Now, not only did I do that, but I also went with bigger hardware in places. You know, bigger screws. Because when you're going to an 18 or 24 volt system with bigger motors, you're putting a lot more stress on the rear end. And you got to remember, it's just plastic you're screwing into. So, you know, my wife and I, we modified it. It was her idea, the way we decided to do it. It's kind of hard to show you without flipping this thing over, but we made brackets in the back to support the rear end, keep it tighter, because you don't want that rear end slopping around with the bigger motors and the more juice, the more power, because things that fall apart, and what'll happen is it end up bending your shaft that goes through here, and then your wheels will turn out around and it'll break your gears in your gearboxes. So just something to keep in mind. Now, you will need a bunch of tools, okay? You know, you will need a set of 9s, you will need a set of strippers, a set of diagonals, Phillips screwdrivers, and this little stubby screwdriver will come in handy, especially right here, if you decide to put the brake arrestor in to get that screw out. As you can see, you don't have any room for a regular screwdriver. It'd be kind of tough. And again, I can't stress enough, the brake reduction module, which is what it's called, very important if you're going to go to an 18 or a 24 volt system. Very important. Unless you want to keep tearing your kids' power wheels apart to replace gearboxes. You'll also, it comes with 14 gauge wire. Now, I went with 10 gauge because you got more juice going. So a bigger wire is a lot better. You need some electrical tape. You'll need some connectors. Now these are real pricey. I had some of them, but it had been several years since I bought any because I needed to buy a few more for this project, and they're pretty pricey. So people say Walmart's the best place to go. Don't know, but might want to try that if you have to get some. This is the grease for the gears. You can get that at ML Toys as well. It's only $3 or $4. Doesn't hurt. You can put too much grease in. If you put too much grease in, it'd be harder to turn the gears, which will put more wear on your motors. So you want to keep that in mind. Just moderately put it in. You will need Loctite. If you decide to go with the 775s, and again, I can't stress enough, I hope you do decide to go with the 775 high performance, because I also have a built-in fan, like I mentioned, and that helps cool your motor down. These stock motors do not have any of that. But when you go to reinstall your motor, when you put your gears back in, and you go to reinstall your motor, you want to put Loctite on these two screws. You can see the stock ones. You can see the Loctite they had on there, the blue. You want to use Loctite because the vibration will wiggle them out, and that motor will get loose in there. And when that motor gets loose in there, this pinion gear is going to be wobbling around when it's hitting this first gear, and it's going to break things. So you want to use Loctite on that. Another thing I want to stress, if you get the still first gear, again, like I said, both of these are still gears. One is just orange and one is just white. Now I will tell you this, in my opinion, the orange plastic is much more durable than the white. It seems to be more harder than the white. Again, the still is better. I would get the still. These will work great for a 12 volt system or a 6 volt system. They will not work for an 18 or 24 volt system. But when you get the new first gear, then still what you will have to do in your gearbox, it will come with a set of ball bearings. It'll have 2 ball bearings when it comes in the kit. You will have to sand this post right here. That's the most time consuming. My wife and I spent an hour. She grabbed one, I grabbed the other, and we sanded these down. You don't want to sand them too much, though. You don't want it to be too small, so you want to periodically check that bearing as you're sanding. You know, just want to use a piece of sandpaper. Don't use a file or anything. Just use a medium grit, not real fine because you'll be there for months. Just a medium grit piece of sandpaper, and file that down. But you want to be real careful that you don't over sand that. You don't want it to be too small. You don't want that gear flopping back and forth in there because it won't line up properly with the rest of the gears. I think that's pretty much, well, that covers pretty much well everything I was trying. I've seen a lot of videos. I did a lot of research and watched a lot of videos before when I started this project, and it took me about a month working a little here and there on it to get this straightened out. But this is what you want it to look like. I'm seeing guys hooking batteries up wrong on these videos. Everything's backwards. They have everything so confused, and this is the way you want to go. This is the way you want it to look. You know, these 30 amp circuit breakers are pretty important for the safety of your child in case something would go wrong. So you're going to pretty much will need quite an array of tools. As you can see, I've got drill bits as well, wrenches, drills. You know, that depends on, you know, what you want to do, but I just made extra modifications like I mentioned earlier to tighten everything up. But again, the site where I got all of my stuff is ML Toys, and I have to stress there's no number to get a hold of them, so it's all strictly email. And so if you have a problem, that's the only bad thing about it. There's really no communication. There's no one to call. So you would have to do everything via email. But the parts seem to be pretty good. They're a little pricey, but usually within 3 days you have your item, just at regular standard shipping cost. So, okay, that's all I got. I hope that this video was beneficial to you, and hit the like button and subscribe. Thanks.